You all know the Power Rangers, so I'm not going to waste time giving a complete detailed history of the franchise.
The series took footage from an installment of a Japanese show called Super Sentai and replaced the original cast of mostly 20-something American actors portraying teenagers in a town called Angel Grove. These teenagers were recruited by the wizard Zordon in order to combat the evil forces of the witch Rita Repulsa. These teenagers with attitude were given power morphers, the means by which they transformed into the title characters.
Needless to say, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers became a phenomenon, continuing to the present day in various incarnations. I was just the right age when the original show premiered in the States, and I became hooked, eating up anything and everything Power Rangers. I stopped watching around the Turbo period, but it was the original series that had the greatest impact on me. As mentioned in the last review, Bandai, along with Sega, released a number of Power Rangers games for various consoles and handhelds. Today, we're going to look at a number of these video game adaptations, starting with the Bandai titles. So, without further delay, let's jump into things. It's Morphin time! Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for Game Boy!
Alright, we're off to a good start, with a nice 8-bit rendition of the theme. Playing this on an actual Game Boy, the Rangers all look the same, with the Pink Ranger skirt missing, and are one unified tone, which looks black at some parts and pinkish at others. Using the Super Game Boy accessory for the Super Nintendo, however, adds more colors to the palette, along with a neat Power Rangers themed border. On the title screen, you can select between Start and Option. The option screen has choices for level, where you can choose between normal or hard, and password. The default difficulty is normal, and the option that you choose will have an impact on the end of the game, but more on that later. Starting the game brings up the Ranger Select screen, giving the option of playing as the original 5 teenagers, Trini, Billy, Jason, Kimberly, and Zach. It doesn't really matter which Ranger you choose, as they all pretty much play the same. The only thing that changes, at least on the Super Game Boy, is the color of the background and enemies, meaning if you play as the Pink Ranger, everything on screen will be varying degrees of pink. The gameplay, however, stays static throughout and sticks to the same formula. The Ranger fights their way through a bunch of putties and other enemies, and upon finishing this segment, the Rangers form the Megazord and take on the level boss. In the Megazord form, you can jump, kick, and attack with the sword in both standing and crouching positions. A special charge shot can be accessed by pressing the select button and attacking, but this drains the life bar, so it's best to stick to the conventional attacks. Remember how I said the difficulty level you play on affects the outcome? If Rita Repulsa is defeated on normal, Zordon congratulates the Rangers for their victory, but states that Rita is still alive, and suggests beating the game on hard for the true ending. I wasn't going to let that stand, so I put in the password for the last level on hard, took down Rita, only to find out that though Rita is defeated, there is a bigger, badder foe on the horizon waiting to take down the Power Rangers. Ultimately, there's not much of a difference between the endings. The hard ending contains a few more shots of the Rangers posing, but it still boils down to a standard congrats screen. That was so worth the extra time. I feel like a better person now that I've experienced it. If you want to play a handheld Power Rangers game, this is one of the better options. The side-scrolling leaves a little to be desired, especially the jumping, but the graphics capture the look of the show and the music is fantastic. Surprisingly, this version is the hardest of all of the games I played for this review. The later boss fights can be very rage-inducing, and the spike and rock obstacles near the end require perseverance and adept skills to overcome. The difficulty does not diminish the fun factor of the game, however, and I would recommend giving this one a try if you're in the mood for some portable Power Rangers action.
Super Nintendo Power Rangers!
This is the Power Rangers title I played the most in my youth. I love pretty much everything about this game. First of all is the soundtrack, which is filled with memorable tunes, including the best rendition of the theme song. Next are the sprites, which retain the look of the show, but with an added cartoony element. Like the Game Boy version, you can play as the original 5, again with the Pink Ranger skirt omitted, but this time you start off playing as the teenagers themselves, a concept that adds depth and is executed very well, with the exception of Zack, who just looks off. The teens don't morph into Ranger form until the stage boss is encountered for the first time. I love how nerdy Billy is depicted, especially those baggy overalls he's wearing. The character looks kind of like Lester the Unlikely. Both are pretty much on par on the doofus scale. Each character's moves reflect their personalities from the show. Billy's are awkward and unathletic, Zack's are dance-oriented, and Jason's are brawny yet agile. Attacking in a crouch position as Kimberly or Trini sends a kick that lines up at just the right angle that, well, let me just show you. Now that's a low blow. In Ranger mode, their signature weapons become their main source of attack. Jason has his sword, Kimberly has her bow, Zack the axe, Billy his lance, and Trini her daggers, the latter of which attack similar to Donatello's staff and Raphael's scythe from Turtles in Time or Hyperstone Heist. At the end of each level, the Rangers fight the boss from earlier, and none of them are really a challenge, especially if you hold on to the one bomb each Ranger receives per continue. After passing level 5, the Rangers and their Zords unite to form the Megazord. The remaining levels are Zord fights, with the last boss having 2 forms. When he is vanquished, the teenagers are shown driving down the highway, palm trees and the beach in the background. Man, somebody really wants to get the word out about the house breakfast. There's like 4 signs on this one stretch of road. You know what? Just because you annoyed me, I'm not gonna go to your stupid diner. How do you feel now? The teens end up at Ernie's Juice Bar, where Zack busts out some dance moves that are basically identical to the ones used to break the putties, while the others, including Bulk and Skull, cheer him on in the background. By cheering, I of course mean shrugging their shoulders and just looking awkward. I'm looking at you, Billy! Like the Game Boy version, this game teases that the menace of Rita Repulsa isn't over, as she looms menacingly in the sky. There are 3 passwords after the scene, teasing something left to discover, perhaps even a fight with Rita herself! Nope, just 2-player versions of the Megazord levels at the end of the game. This is one of the only flaws in a phenomenal game. Power Rangers for the Super Nintendo is fantastic! A strong soundtrack, great graphics and sprites, mostly, and the ability to play as the teens, each having different move skill sets. This one is a little pricier than the others, ranging from $10 to $15 online, but it's worth every dollar. This was one of my favorites as a kid, and it's still fun to play all these years later.
Before we cover the Sega Original Series Power Rangers games, let's make a quick diversion. As I mentioned earlier, I only watched the first few series and am not very familiar with the later ones, including Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. On one of my many flea market trips, I found the Nintendo 64 game based on that title, which, being a Power Rangers game, I couldn't pass up. How does this stack up to the classics? Let's find out.
This is completely alien territory to me, but according to the intro, the Lightspeed Ranger crew consists of a Blue Ranger, a Red Ranger, a Green Ranger, a Yellow Ranger, and a Pink Ranger. The Rangers' true identities are never shown, nor are their names mentioned. Being that I've never watched the show, I don't even know if they have names or if they're even human, but this really doesn't bother me. There are 2 forms of play. Titanium Quest, the story mode, and Megazord Arena, the 2-player fighting mode. There's a standard options screen, but there's no need to bother with that. The game is so easy that the difficulty is completely irrelevant. The Titanium Quest involves a race between the Rangers and Diabolico, the main villain, to obtain the Titanium Power Coins. Apparently, these coins are necessary for the Titanium Ranger, a 6th non-playable Ranger, to be at his most powerful, but they also cause the creation of the Ranger's biggest challenge yet, the Mirror Megazord. Like the title states, the main element of the gameplay involves the Rangers doing what they do best, rescuing people, over and over and over again. Of course, they're not very good at their job, and at one point the Rangers actually have to clean up their own mess. These talents have entered the Lightspeed crew into the dictionary. Oh, not under professionalism, under incompetence. These rescue missions constitute the different forms of gameplay throughout the course of story mode. One involves saving civilians from monsters in a top-down 3D environment, while another has a ranger driving down a street putting out cars on fire. The control in these parts is pretty awkward. You can only steer down or up on the screen, and the speed cannot be controlled by the player. On a number of occasions when I was trying to help a burning civilian, I accidentally rammed them off the road. Oops, my bad. If there's one word I would associate with this game, it would have to be goofy. Everything about the characters, heroes and villains, looks odd. The way they move, the way they attack, and the sounds they make. Furthermore, it's hard to take this game seriously when it contains some of the wackiest voiceover in history. Every time a level is completed, the Rangers shout, "Yay!" in the least energetic, most monotone way possible. You would think it would get annoying after hearing it constantly, but it just gets funnier. One thing that does get annoying, though, are the sounds of the civilians, which are the same throughout the game. On top of this, the Rangers themselves have the same voiceover as the civilians when they need to be rescued. You'd think they could compose themselves more than the average citizen, but no, they're just as imbecilic as the rest. Though there are a variety of playstyles in the game, they just repeat in a pattern over the course of the episodes, and this becomes tedious fast. Fortunately, the game isn't very long, and even if you fail a mission, you can go back to the section last played from the menu screen. In the end, the Rangers defeat Diabolico and his monsters, and obtain all of the titanium power coins. Celebrating their victory, the Rangers raise their fist to the sky and shout, "Awesome!" What more would you expect from these dopes, who earlier in the game, after a Megazord fight, shouted, "Cool jets!" Numbskulls, every one of them.
When I picked up this game, I couldn't have imagined in a million years the zaniness in store for me. The humorous tone, though completely unintentional, is the one thing that stayed with me long after my playthrough. As I mentioned at the beginning of this section, I'm completely unfamiliar with Lightspeed Rescue, and that's probably for the best, as I had no expectations when I inserted this cartridge into my Nintendo 64. To say the least, this is definitely the most unique of the Power Rangers titles I've played. Comparing this game to any others in the series is like comparing strawberry jelly to Tabasco sauce. I'd recommend this game just for its eccentric nature alone. With that side trip completed, let's get back on the main road. Genesis Mighty Morphin Power Rangers!
Unlike the previous versions mentioned above, which were in the vein of side-scrolling beat-em-ups, this is a flat-out story-based fighter. The long and short of it is Rita sends a monster down to rampage Earth, you choose a ranger, take them down in one round, Rita makes the monster grow, the rangers get in their Zords and form the Megazord or Dragon Zord, and destroy them before they cause too much damage. Repeat this formula 5 times, and that's it. I played this as a kid, but in playing it again after all these years, I was surprised to see how short it is. It can be completed in a half an hour at most without continuing.
One of the biggest positive factors that elevates Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Genesis above all others is the inclusion of the Green Ranger as a playable character. Though I wasn't a big fan of Tommy, the Green Ranger was always my favorite, and I hated when they took away his powers on the show and eventually made him the White Ranger. Don't get me wrong, I like the White Ranger, but come on, there's no comparison between the Dragon Zord and the White Falcon Zord. Plus, the White Ranger couldn't do this.
Going back to the gameplay, the Ranger sprites look fantastic, perhaps the best of all of the original series adaptations. The moves stick to the Street Fighter tradition of Hadouken-style attacks, and charge back forward and charge down to up moves for all the characters. In the end, the Rangers take on the final boss, Cyclopsis, not Rita Repulsa, and the day is saved. There's a final cutscene with the Rangers Zords combining to form the Ultra Zord and blasting the hell out of Rita's castle. The Rangers pose, the game congratulates you, the end. Ultimately, despite being so short, Genesis Power Rangers earns its place near the top of all Power Rangers titles. As a fighter, it doesn't stick out from others from the era, but the move scheme is simple, and it's great finally being able to play as the Green Ranger. I loved this game as a kid, and I still enjoy it greatly today. Highly recommended, and it can be found pretty cheap.
Power Rangers on Sega CD?
Utilizing the full motion video that was the main characteristic of the console, the Sega CD version is in the vein of Dragon's Lair, where you have to press a certain button or direction when the prompt appears on screen. A beeping sound will indicate success, while a buzzing sound signals failure. Unlike Dragon's Lair, there is a life bar, and hitting the wrong button or hitting the correct button after the window has elapsed will lower the life bar. The bar is increased when the characters access the Ranger powers, so a poor performance on the first part of the episode doesn't mean a level won't be completed. The story involves truncated versions of the early episodes from the show, 9 total, covering the origin through the Green Ranger saga and beyond. As a level progresses, like in the show, the teens use their power morphers and call upon the Zords. At certain parts of the Megazord fights, a prompt appears that shows all 3 buttons flashing on screen and a meter. All 3 buttons need to be repeatedly pressed to fill this bar, and doing so will result in less damage. The reaction time for these segments vary with the difficulty setting, which give you more or less continues depending on how high you set it. That about sums up the Sega CD version of Power Rangers.
Well, there you have it. I had this whole thing scripted out where the last time I captured this, the game froze. Then I couldn't access the further levels, so I just gave up and just stopped at that point. But when I was recording the footage here now, apparently it didn't want to stop working, so it continued working. But as you see, I was playing on intermediate, and it won't let me play the last ones just because I'm not playing on expert difficulty. So it continued on from the Green Ranger saga to the Green Candle saga, and the Green Ranger just lost his powers because the candle burned out. But I really don't care to play it any further to access the last level, so I guess that's it for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Sega CD.
This wasn't the only part I encountered where the game froze. When the meter is emptied, a scene pops up pertaining to what was going on at the time of failure, stating, "You are out of continues, press start." After the screen, regardless of the playable character at the time, the Megazord plunges into lava while the teenagers helplessly moan about their fate. One time this happened, the game got caught in a skipping loop with Trini saying the same thing over and over again. I would have liked to play the rest of the episodes, but I can't be mad when comedic gold like this pops up every now and then. Playing the Sega CD version is like controlling the episodes. I give it up to Sega for releasing a game that I probably would have loved to play if I had owned a Sega CD as a kid, but really, outside of the novelty of being a part of the action, there's not much in regards to replay value.
It's time for my favorite out of all the games covered in this review. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie for Genesis!
This is just plain awesome! If there's one theme throughout all of these titles, it's that they all have excellent tunes. This game plays nearly identically to Streets of Rage, and that adds to its enjoyment factor. One minor blemish though is that, unlike Streets of Rage, where each character had a unique special move, all of the Rangers perform the same spinning kick. One factor that is unique to the Power Rangers game is that holding the B button results in the character performing a charged attack, and unlike the special attacks, these are unique to each Ranger. For example, Rocky performs a jumping sword thrust, while Adam shoots his axe laser. Though this game is based on the movie, the story extends beyond the range of the film, covering events that happened in the show. The first levels involve the Ranger lineup from the movie: Billy, Kimberly, Tommy, Aisha, Rocky, and Adam. But later levels involve flashbacks to the show, where Zack, Jason, and Trini are playable. This is a great premise and adds layers to what might have been a standard movie tie-in. The only downside is some scenes from the film that would have been cool to play in the game are breezed over in the between-level cutscenes. Ivan Ooze is the final boss, and his final form is some robotic bee-like creature. The Rangers form the Ninja Megazord, or Falcon Zord, and the fight begins. This is the hardest boss fight in the game, as Ivan constantly charges at the Zord and drains life from it. The difficulty, well, isn't that difficult at all up to this point, but this is where I lost the most lives. As Ooze's life bar depletes, he takes to the sky and the Rangers follow. You would expect the fight to continue, but a ranking screen is the next thing that appears. What? Is this the ending? No, there is an ending, and it comes after initials are entered. Look, no one has cared about score or ranking since the heyday of the arcades and early home consoles. I doubt there were competitions to see who could get the highest score in Power Rangers the movie for Genesis. Anyway, after this brief waste of time, Ooze and the Ninja Falcon Megazord are shown duking it out, back and forth, until Ooze is clobbered by a pink blast of energy. The world is saved and the Rangers are victorious! We cut back to Ernie's Juice Bar again, and the change of scenery is scored with the Bulk and Skull theme. And it sounds just as silly as it did on the show. I love it! Bulk and Skull go on about their heroic deeds and how the Power Rangers needed their help, as our heroic teens laugh in the background. Just another day in Angel Grove, but not just another Power Rangers game.
This is easily my favorite of all the classic series Power Rangers games I've played. It's a great Streets of Rage style beat 'em up that, while taking liberties with the main storyline of the movie, captures the feel of the show best of all of the original series adaptations. Speaking on that topic, these are but a fraction of the available Mighty Morphin Power Rangers games, which include versions for the Game Gear, as well as other titles for the Game Boy and Super Nintendo. In the future, when I obtain more of these Power Rangers games, I may put out a second part to this video covering those titles. Until then,